And now, from God's Unchanging Word Studios in New Orleans, we are pleased to bring you news, nuggets, and insights with today's host, Tom Carey.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to God's Unchanging Word, another edition to News, Nuggets, and Insights. Today is Friday, July 16th, 2021, and there is a lot going on. We're going to keep it here in the United States, but let me just mention, in Cuba, everyone's heard of the unrest that's taking place down there, all the arrests, and now many people are suddenly disappearing. In South Africa, over 72 people have been killed, 1,200 arrested as they burn and loot almost entire towns down in South Africa. And it's going on all over the continent. We're going to talk more about that next week. I wanted to mention that to you because there's just so much going on. You can't get it all in one program. But we want to stay right here because this is very important for us and where we stand in the morality of our nation. The erosion of biblical values, part 2. We're going to pick it up today. And then we're going to follow up with Tisha B'Av. In case you don't know what that is, we're going to tell you about that. We've got 2 videos, by the way. A time of mourning. And then we'll take up where we left off last week, where we couldn't get into, is God's 7-year land rest. Let's begin today with a little short story showing you right here in America how we feel about our nation as being portrayed around the globe. BLM and the American flag, the symbol of hatred now, they're saying. As we've been seeing the Olympic stars trancing and Trump and just destroying the image of our flag, here is the bottom line of what's going on. Let's play this.
So the Utah chapter of Black Lives Matter drawing some criticism for a 4th of July Facebook post calling the American flag a symbol of hatred. It says in part, quote, "When we Black Americans see this flag, we know the person flying it is not safe to be around. When we see this flag, we know the person flying it is a racist. When we see this flag, we question your intelligence. We know to avoid you. It is a symbol of hatred."
Can you believe that? A little short clip, but that's being portrayed across the globe and around the United States, and just continuing to teach the children growing up how hatred is growing and dividing our nation. And it's been like this now. It's getting worse and worse and worse in the past few years now. It's been going on. But like now, we've been accelerating into this warp speed to divide. Let's talk about that today as we get into this. Part 2 on the erosion of biblical values. Iniquity shall abound. That's what we're going to talk about in our story. We're going to break it down into 2 segments. First is going to be lawlessness, and then the sacrificing of our children. It's unbelievable how we're just turning our children over to evil. Wait till you see what's going on. Crime on the rise in America. Matthew 24, verse 12 says, "Iniquity shall abound." Another word for iniquity is lawlessness. Lawlessness shall abound. Following a year of defund the police, crime is out of control in nearly every major city. And even here in New Orleans, I'm getting more and more people being shot, drive-bys, and you name it. But it's going on all over the country. Can you imagine it not? Unbelievable what's going on. The U.S. has saw a significant crime rise across major cities in 2020 and is not letting up in 2021. Preliminary government estimates show that 25% single-year increase in the killings in 21. It was up last year. It's up even more this year above last year. In some cities, the number of homicides has remained higher than usual through the early months of 2021. The rise in homicides will likely translate into an additional 4,000 to 5,000 people killed. Can you imagine that? And you can go city by city, but overall, they said there'll probably be between 4,000 to 5,000 more people killed this year than last year. I went back and I looked at the war in Iraq, and on any given year, the maximum people killed, American soldiers in Iraq, was 995 in a year. And we're talking about here in America, 4,000 to 5,000 additional people killed right here in America. That's just what the estimates say. All right, so now I took to Chicago because Chicago's in the news all the time, and it continues to get worse instead of better. This was on the Thursday before the July 4th weekend. In just one day, Let me bring out what happened in just one day, right before the 4th of July weekend. But before I do, let me draw your attention to this little box right here. So let's pull that up on the screen, Jeff. That little box, in case you couldn't see it, in 2021, there's already been 326 murders in Chicago and 1,489 people shot. The shootings. Can you believe that? That's just one city. And this goes on year after year after year. This year seems to be a little bit worse than the other. So now, in this one day, let's get back to this. There was 32 people shot total. 4 of them were killed and 28 were wounded. That was just on a Thursday night. That was just warming up into the July 4th weekend. By the end of the weekend, the Chicago Independence Weekend marred by violence with 108 people shot and 17 killed. Can you believe that? That's just one city. I mean, it's like a war zone going on in this one city. And even though they draw the attention, the shootings and killings is going on all over the major cities. This is from the National Fraternal Order of Police. Look at the increase in crime that's surging. In homicides from 58, Portland, 533%. Can you believe that? 533%. New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, and Philadelphia. There's something major going on here. There's a civil unrest of what's taking place, and it has a lot more to do with it just defunding police. Look at this. Shoplifting in San Francisco. The Penal Code 459, the statute that makes shoplifting a misdemeanor offense in California. The section defines shoplifting as entering into an open business with the intent to steal merchandise $950 or less. And now they're not even arresting people. If it hasn't, they don't think it's $950. They didn't even want to arrest anybody no more. So it's opened up just the incredible amount of stealing. We've all seen that video of this person on the bike. I'm going to show you that video plus a little bit more in just a second. The crime is punishable if you do by probation, fines, restitution, and almost no one ever gets jail time, but a maximum of 6 months in jail. But it's all just a misdemeanor. So people do it. If you let them do it, they're going to do it. Let's play the video.
Call 911. Wow.
17 Walgreens councilmen pulling out of the Bay Area because they can't make any money, because you can walk in and steal whatever you want and it's no longer a crime. So Walgreens is like, we're out.
Prosecutors in San Francisco and in many other places throughout the state of California, for example, but not just there, no longer charge shoplifters. So people steal whatever they want.
The store is closing due to what local reports are calling a spree of rampant shoplifting. And look at this. Just 15 minutes after an Inside Edition crew showed up at the drugstore, we found this guy jumping over the front counter, taking an airbed, and leaving the store on his scooter. No questions asked, no one stopping him.
He just came in with a suitcase. That's crazy, dog.
Every day.
They just come in with suitcases?
Yeah.
I don't care.
Call 911.
We're close right now. We're close right now.
You better stop. You better stop. This is America. You better stop.
Wasn't even a beat.
Move. Out the way, y'all. Watch outside for real. I just come outside. I'm going. Somebody come outside. So watch out, please. Stop hurting him. You dumbass. You don't know what you're doing. You don't supposed to hurt him. What's up? Yeah. Please get out of here. Oh my God.
Bro, don't.
brother. Come on, brother. What? Come on, brother. Come on. Come on.
To be clear, it's not that Americans have become more prone to steal. It's that stealing is now allowed. And when you allow something, you get more of it. So this is the result of intentional policies designed to give us more stealing, designed to give us more murder, more rape, more pushing strangers in front of subway cars. It's happened because the people in charge allowed it to happen.
Iniquity shall abound. There's so much crime going on, there's not enough police. Well, of course not. You've taken their funding away. You don't have many. When they arrest them, nothing's ever done. And of course, you don't know if the police themselves will be charged for harassment or some civil lawsuit that goes on. But now let's go on with this. What else is going on? They're dropping the charges for hundreds of alleged looters. They call them alleged. They got them on tape. They got the video, but alleged. In late May and early June 2020, looters smashed storefronts in the Bronx, Manhattan, and the boroughs of New York. Many were caught on tape, some with their faces visible. Others even posted their own videos of their actions in the night of social media, and hundreds were arrested. Former Chief Chapman says that the New York Police Department did some follow-up, and the data shows that the district attorneys and the courts have not, and it's stopped, like it has not what? Well, they're allowing people who committed the crimes to go scot-free. In other words, they have not, he didn't know what to say, to arrest anybody. They're not prosecuting the people. Let me show you just a few headlines from around the country. Cities across America are dropping criminal charges on rioters and looters. This is just headlines. Why charges against protesters are being dismissed by the thousands. This is New York Times. Most charges against George Floyd protesters dropped, the analysis shows. Criminal charges against dozens of Portland protesters dropped. Escaping justice, hundreds of BLM rioters, looters, and vandals have charges dropped despite destruction and violent protests. This was some of the worst that we saw. This is where it all began. This is when they began. They actually burnt down a police station. Remember that? And all these businesses that were burnt down. Even in Fort Worth, police dropped rioting charges against protesters. Fox reports that charges will be dropped against hundreds of protesters in another city. So as homicides soar nationwide, mayors seeing their options for regaining control, and I just stopped it there. Because there's a sub-headline that goes right underneath that, says, gone. The options to be able to stop this are gone. There's nothing they can do right now, and they will not admit to what the problem really is. We're going to continue to cover that because it's not going to get better. It's only going to get worse. Let's pick it up now, showing you how some of this builds from what we're teaching our young. Remember, God says you raise up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he's not depart from it. So what are we doing as we raise our children? Look at Proverbs 22, verse 6. Train up a child in the way that he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Our school systems, this is critical that you understand what's going on, because until recently, and until COVID, when we began to hear and see some of the things that were being taught in our schools, most of us were totally unaware of what was taking place. The new LGBTQ+ song goes viral. I don't know if you've seen this yet or not. San Francisco Gay Men's Choir, we're standing by our controversial song. They have doubled down. You think that we're corrupt, it says. If our agenda goes unchecked, one of the members sings. Funny, just this once, you are correct. You need to pay attention of this song that they have just doubled down on. Let's play that video.
We're coming for your children. We will convert your children. We'll convert your children. Yes, we will. Reaching one and all. There's really no escaping it. We'll convert your children. Happens bit by bit, quietly and subtly, and you will barely notice it. We're coming for them. We're coming for your children. We're coming for them. We're coming for them. We're coming for your children. Then soon, we're almost certain your kids will start converting you. The gay agenda is coming home. This sounds like some sort of creepy cult or horror movie script or something. Yeah, it does. These are actually lyrics to a song that was just put out by the San Francisco Gay Men's Choir about how they're coming for your children. You think I'm joking. I can see through your screen that you think I'm joking. I'm not joking. This is real. You're about to watch the video right now. See if you can get through it.
As we celebrate Pride on the progress we've made over these past years, there's still work to be done. So to those of you out there who are still working against equal rights, we have a message for you.
You think we're sinful? You fight against our rights. You say we all lead lives you can't respect. But you're just frightened. You think that we'll corrupt your kids if our agenda goes unchecked. Funny, just this once, you're correct. We'll convert your children. Happens bit by bit, quietly and subtly, and you will barely notice it. You can keep him from disco, warn about San Francisco, make him wear pleated pants, we don't care. We'll convert your children. We'll make them tolerant and fair.
At first I didn't get why you'd be so scared of us turning your children into accepting, caring people, but I see now why you'd have a problem with that.
Just like you worried, they'll change their group of friends. You won't approve of where they go at night to protests. Oh, and you'll be disgusted. So gross. When they start finding things online that you've kept far from their sight, like information. Guess what? You'll still be alright. We're coming for them. We're coming for your children. We'll try a little pride. We'll convert your children. Then we'll turn to you, giving up the fear inside is freeing like you never knew. Go and see San Francisco. Go and turn up that disco. You'll forget you were ever upset. We'll convert your children and make an ally of you yet.
And they are, and they have been. And they said it meant every single word of that song. Whatever you've held away and you've kept the children away from all of this, they're telling them they're going to get to our children. The school curriculum, so how are they doing this? Let me put a warning out there. I'm going to put this like a PG-13 or an R rating. As I was putting this program together, trying to bring out what they're talking to our children about in school, I was embarrassed to even bring it here to the program in case you have children watching. So I tried to clean up as much as I can. There's a couple of areas in here. I just want to give you an advance warning that you might want to watch this before you bring it to your children. But the thing about it, they're bringing it to the children in the schools without our knowledge. Here's one called 10,000 Dresses. As part of promoting a tolerance to children, the SPLC recommends the highly controversial book 10,000 Dresses for the students in kindergarten through second grade. Among the other lessons, the book teaches children, typically ages 5 through 8, to ignore their parents and impersonate the opposite sex if they feel they are born in the wrong body. So they're telling the kids, if you feel like you're born in the wrong body, don't listen to your parents. You need to live out what you feel. Numerous state educators and bureaucracies and officials have endorsed the extreme program despite the objections of parents. Public school efforts to confuse the children have been so successful. In 2017, from a UCLA study, they found that 1 in 4 children, California children ages 12 through 17 are now gender nonconforming. 1 in 4. Making matters worse, those officials sometimes act on it too. From California to Florida, school districts are using gender transition plans to help students start transitioning to a new gender even without the parents' permission. SIECUS. So what is SIECUS? It's called the Sexual Information and Education Council of the United States. This is SIECUS that's being taught in our school systems. SIECUS, the group that grew out of Kinsey's perverted pseudoscience, today is known as just SIECUS, Sex Education for Social Change. And indeed, social change is the goal, radical, horrifying social change. As far back as 1979, the CDC admitted that there was an ulterior motive of what they were teaching our kids. In a report headlined, An Analysis of the U.S. Sex Education Programs and Evaluation Methods, the researchers revealed that the goals of sex education in American schools had become much more ambitious than parents had realized. Their goals include changing the minds and the attitudes and behaviors. So whatever values that you have been teaching and morals that you've been teaching, if you haven't been paying attention, they're changing them in schools. Just like that song says, they're coming for your children. We're going to do it little by little. You won't even recognize what we're doing. Well, this goes back to 1979. They began warning parents of what is going on. Sex ed, the dangerous lies and the propaganda. On a worksheet for 7th graders purporting to online risk of the various sex acts, this is what I want to caution you. I took out some of the actual things that they're teaching our children. I mean, they're very specific in this program, and then they bring diagrams in. They ask kids questions and how to answer certain questions. Of the various sex acts is what they're teaching the kids. For example, children ages 11 and 12 are taught about anal sex using a condom correctly. 11 and 12-year-olds. I could have brought the curriculum in and showed it to you because I wanted to verify this is correct. I couldn't do it. I mean, why are you teaching kids this, 11 and 12? They're teaching them to be homosexual and how to deal with it. They also talked about how it's a low-risk activity. Another sex edu program recommends teaching children 10 and under that sexual activity can be a part of commercial sex work. In other words, you want to go into the sex trade? You want to be a prostitute? Sex is just a part of the process. But it is even worse than that because, see, this goes into the transgenderism and pedophilia that they're teaching the kids. So they have a right to decide when to have sex. This is 10-year-olds. So you understand why this is very uncomfortable to talk about. But they're teaching it to our children. The real goal, ultimately, to destroy the nuclear family is the foundation of civilization. As Karl Marx and countless other totalitarians understood, the state will step in and fill the void left by the family unit. Trust the government. We're going to take care of it for you. In short, sex ed is aimed at undermining the very building blocks of society. And they're getting away with it. It's going unchecked right now. Ultimately, so where are we today, ultimately, with all of this? Governments and school boards across America have failed in their duty to protect children from the ambiguous evils that now pervade the so-called public education system masquerading as health and tolerance. Americans are now confronted with a tax-funded monster that threatens not just the innocence of their children, but their liberties, families, and even the very future of their civilization. We have taken and pulled God out of every single walk of life. We've turned our children over to evil. They now take and control everything, and they tell the parents, you are out. We will raise your children the way we want to. And they'll put a song out, just like you just saw, we're coming after your children. And they are. And they're gaining ground. And God's word tells us, as I brought up last week, unless he cuts time short, no one would be saved alive. Because he says it would be like the time of Sodom and like unto Gomorrah. And there's two things that happened there. The entire civilization was agreeing with the homosexual movement of their day. And the second thing was God brought it to destruction. And he will do it again. One more thing before I move on, and I don't have time to get into this with depth, but I need to leave this. This is confusing to our children. So this is totally goes against everything we believe in. If that's not enough, this is the new confusion that's being added to the division and the dividing of peace in our nation. The kids are now being taught CRT, the critical race theory. And this is the bottom line of it. Doesn't matter what race you're in, this is the bottom line. If you're white, you're a racist from the day you're born. If you're a person of color, you are oppressed from the day you're born. And in either case, you're being told there's nothing you can do to change it. Unbelievable. We'll cover more of this going in. But they're taking children from the time they're preschool and they're telling them what's going on. This is going to divide and create more hatred than you can ever imagine. Everything that happens to anyone growing up from that time forward will blame it on race. Now, one more embarrassing story I need to bring out. I couldn't even bring you the video of this story. Library apologizes after hosting a rainbow dildo butt monkey. That's the way they do it. It's a rainbow dildo, and in case you don't understand what a dildo is, it's just another name for male genitalia to entertain children. According to the library, the goal of the event was to provide caregivers with fun, family-friendly activities, maintain literacy levels, and create a safe space, let me repeat that, a safe space for children to connect with their peers. There's the monkey. And this angle here does show the male genitalia hanging out. And he runs around this library, swinging, and you can get the picture, in front of all of these kids at a library. Let me go back. Creates a safe space for children to connect with their peers. Who brings these kids to this program? Caregivers, parents. The video shows a man dressed up in a multicolored monkey costume with male genitalia running wildly through the library. It seems to me, one person said, that at least one librarian would have been aware that the performance was not suitable for children. A rainbow dildo butt monkey does not exactly scream family friendly. I mean, how far can you go? You know, we've been covering this stuff at the library since 4 years ago when they first started doing that. And we admitted it was going to get worse. But I can never have imagined that it would get to this point. Well, finally someone says, oh, maybe that's a little too far. Maybe it's a little too far now, but what about next year? Anyway, I'm going to just bring that out, and I want to move on now. Look what Hosea says. Hosea 4:6 says this, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge because they have rejected knowledge. I will reject you. You shall be no priest to me. But here's the scary part. Seeing that you have forgotten the law of God, I will also forget your children. In other words, because you have kicked God out, He's not going to be there to protect our kids. We, as God's people, and you as God's family, need to pull together to continue to warn this nation of what's coming. This is beginning to deteriorate because you see, at the results and the ends of all of this, there's something else that takes place. It's found in Tish B'Av, or the 9th of Av. It's a time of cursing. It's the time when the temples, God's temples, were destroyed. I got 2 videos. I'm going to play one here as a history of what the 9th of Av is, and then we're going to close the program with a song on the 9th of Av. Let's play that video.
Every major ancient holiday on the Jewish calendar, even Yom Kippur, is ultimately about joy, except for one, Tisha B'Av. On this day, the 9th of the Hebrew month of Av, it's said that a series of major tragedies to the Jewish people occurred, including the destruction of the first and second temples. It's a day of mourning for getting kicked out of the land of Israel, for the destruction of Jerusalem, and the medieval expulsions from various lands. It's said that Tisha B'Av is the day when it all went down, literally. Sacred sites, entire communities utterly destroyed, leaving a gaping hole in our collective soul. When life comes crashing down, We're left devastated. We cry, we mourn, we feel isolated. All natural responses to loss. Tisha B'Av is a day of mourning when the Jewish people acknowledge that no, life is not all butterflies and roses, and yes, this tribe has been through some serious suffering. The time prior to this day is known as the 3 weeks. The period starts with a fast on the 17th of Tammuz, when the siege of Jerusalem in 70 CE began, and intensifies during the last 9 days, when the walls were breached until the 9th of Av, when the ancient temple fell. The whole period is somber, and it's customary not to hold weddings during this time. Traditional Jews stop shaving, cutting their hair, and listening to music. During the 9 days, some also refrain from eating meat and drinking alcohol. The final day is Tisha B'Av, a 24-hour fast. In the evening, it's common to sit on low stools or the floor at synagogue and to hear the book of Eicha, Lamentations, chanted by candlelight. The book, traditionally ascribed to Jeremiah, brings readers on a graphic journey of the destruction of Jerusalem by the Babylonians. Silent sit on the ground the elders of fair Zion. They have strewn dust on their heads and girded themselves with sackcloth. The maidens of Jerusalem have bowed their heads to the ground. My eyes are spent with tears, my heart is in tumult. My being melts away over the ruin of my poor people, as babes and sucklings languish in the squares of the city. The melodies of the day are like a dirge, a time of reflection as Lamentations concludes, Hashivenu Adonai, turn us to you, Holy One, and we will return. Renew us as before. Following the reading, it's customary not to greet each other and to leave in silence, honoring the lives lost in the sacred space of introspection. When a dark history seems to follow an entire people around, it's only natural to ask why, or how could this be? Sometimes these questions are real, and sometimes they're more like a lament. Why me? Why us? How could this have happened? Eicha translates literally to how, as in, how could this be? Jewish thinkers have struggled to understand these questions for thousands of years. Historians see these as historical events where one nation overpowered another, but the rabbis understood them differently. In Hebrew, sinat chinam, baseless or useless hatred, was rampant throughout the land. The rabbinic tradition understood the loss of Jerusalem and the temple to be the divine consequence of the people's unethical behavior. That's why this day is also a time to consider improving our own words and actions in the world, especially how we treat others. Tisha B'Av comes in the midst of summer and yanks people out of that summertime and the living is easy feeling. The day invites Jews to turn inward and consider what it means to face national, spiritual, and individual darkness and loneliness. With a reflective heart, the next turn is outward, towards the light of life again, which renews a people's connection to God, to each other, and to the world.
I would not be surprised to find in America that at some point in time going forward that we don't wake up one day on a Tisha B'Av, which begins, I believe, Saturday night this year, July 18th, and find the beginning of a destruction of America. Bring it on the curses like they did with ancient Judah and the loss of the temple, and then in Judah with the temple in 70 AD. I would not be surprised if we don't wake up and find our nation beginning its own destruction. We're going to keep an eye on that, and you should do keep an eye on that. Significant events tied to the 9th of Av. The spies returned with the bad report. Remember the 10 spies, the 12 spies that went in? Both holy temples were destroyed on that day. There was a battle called the Battle of Beitar was lost. So what is that battle? Well, it was a fortress around Jerusalem. It was an ancient terrace-forming village in the Judean highlands. The Beta fortress was the last standing Jewish fortress in the Bar Kokhba revolt in the 2nd century, was destroyed by the Roman army, Emperor Hadrian, in the year 135. It finally fell on the 9th of Av. The Jews were expelled from England, believe it or not, on that day, July 18th, 1290. They were also banished from Spain at sunset on August 1st. The Jews were kicked out. I'm going to tell you about that story in just a second. Also, I wanted to bring this in. World War I actually began as Germany declared war on Russia August 1st, 1914. 9th of Av. The Jews being banished from Spain is an interesting story there. Just 2 months later, Christopher Columbus set sail for America on the last day of Tabernacles, believe it or not. The last great day of the feast, the 8th day with the beginnings, Columbus was on his way to the New World. So when God kicked them out of Spain, they moved up toward England way, the Great Britain, and then Columbus and his fleet took them out of Spain, and those they kicked out the nation, and they moved them on to a new journey. Part of the reason was this biblical fulfillment. 2 Samuel 7, verse 10. I will appoint a place for my people Israel, and I will plant them that they may dwell in the place of their own and move no more, nor the sons of the wickedness oppress them any more as previously. So we're talking about a time when God was going to fulfill a promise to Abraham, when he told to David right here, when they were already in the promised land, that he's going to move them to another place. This was the beginning of that fulfillment. It began with the kicking them out for the 9th of Av. Here's some more. The final solution, 1941, August 2nd, the SS commander Heinrich Himmler formally received the approval for the Nazi Party for the final solution, a central element in the Holocaust that began, which almost 1/3 of the Jewish population perished. The Warsaw Ghetto, 1942, July 23rd, the 9th of Av, the mass deportation of Jews in the Warsaw Ghetto began the trip to the extermination camps at Treblinka. Within 7 weeks, 300,000 were taken and gassed. Unbelievable. This has continued, had been going on. The fall of the temples and the removal of the Jews, we saw that the warning comes from Deuteronomy 28, verse 63 and 64. It says, and it shall be, just as the Lord had rejoiced over you to do good and multiply you, so the Lord will rejoice over you to destroy you and bring you to nothing, and you shall be plucked off from the land which you go to possess. And the Lord will scatter you among all peoples from one end of the earth to another, and there you shall serve other gods which neither you nor your fathers have known, of wood and stone. Those warnings of the cursings are upon this nation today. Because just as he says, you're going to be plucked from the land that I sent you to, as we saw in the prophecy of Christopher Columbus and being kicked out and brought to a land of promise one more time, we are there. But we have abandoned our God, and from this warning, we too will be plucked from the land. This curse, I believe, is on this nation today, and unless it repents, it will not survive the destruction that's coming upon it. The only question I ask, will it begin on Tammuz 9? Is the breach of the walls in the Old Testament, or Tammuz 17 with the breaching of the walls in the New Testament of the temple, or the 9th of Av, the sudden destruction of both? And as I just showed you, all of these horrible events that all took place on the 9th of Av. Unbelievable, but it's true. That's a part of history. All right, tough program today. Really emotionally tough program. So now, when we come back, I'm going to take us into a different segment. We want to pick up where we left off last week, is the God's 7-year land rest. But we'll begin with a video on a special man. We'll be right back. Well, greetings and welcome back. All right, now let's get into our second portion of our program today, our Nuggets portion, God's 7-year land rest. So I got a few things I want to bring out here. It's really encouraging and uplifting after what we had to talk about. I was sitting there watching that video and thinking how wonderful it is to have that special man. And I was thinking about Jeremiah, how Jeremiah they called him the prophet of sorrow, and he wrote the book of Lamentations. And as I was doing that program, thinking about what we had to cover today, listen to our nation, wow, you can see how sorrowful what he had to deal with Jerusalem. But we're going to cover the same thing. We're going to be going into the same thing. But anyway, let's get back to this, Leviticus 25, and something a little more uplifting. The Lord spoke to Moses on the mount, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them that when you come into the land which I give you, then you shall keep a Sabbath unto the Lord. 6 years you shall sow your field, and the 6th year you shall prune your vineyard, and gather the fruit thereof. But in the 7th year there shall be a Sabbath of rest unto the land, a Sabbath of the Lord, that you shall neither sow your field nor prune your vineyard. So just as God commands us to have a 7th day of rest, he also commands the land to rest every 7 years. Verse 5, it says, That which grows of its own accord, of the harvest you shall not reap, neither shall the grapes of your vine undress, for it is a year of rest unto the land. In other words, there's going to be fruit that's going to come up no matter what you do. But you can't harvest that as part of your business and your work and everything. The Sabbath land shall be meat for you. In other words, you can eat it. And those who are your servants, it says, and your handmaids and your hired servant, and the strangers, they can all eat of it. They can all participate of it. But you just can't harvest it as part of your business. So whatever comes up, just enjoy the fruits of it that year, and let the land rest and begin to recuperate. So for your cattle and for the beasts that are in the land, and you shall increase thereof to be meat. Going on. It says, Then I will walk, verse 26, let's see what I have here, 26. Then I will walk contrary to you in fury. Now this is talking about if you don't obey the 7-year land rest. It says you're going to walk contrary. It says, I will chastise you 7 times for your sins. I will destroy your high places, and I will make your cities waste, and I will bring the land into desolation. Then the land shall enjoy her Sabbaths. One of the things we learned when Judah went into captivity for the 7 years, one of the things God says that all those 70 years, God caught up with the land rest that Israel never gave it. So you look at the land today that we have, the farmers and the produce, the land's straining. It's never been given a land rest. So the land doesn't produce what it could produce. Remember when they went into the promised land? When the land they came back with a cluster of grapes between 2 men on a pole. Took 2 men to carry 1 cluster of grapes to show what the land could produce if we were obedient to what God says to do. So there's going to be a time that this land is going to rest again. It says, as long as it lies desolate, it shall rest, because it did not rest in your Sabbaths when you dwelt upon it. These are the warnings that God gave us. In Hebrews 4, it says, For if Jesus had given them a rest. So what did I just do? I just did a transition now from the warning of the 7th day rest to the land rest, and now we're transferring it into pulling this together of a deeper meaning for an end time about the Sabbath. For if Jesus had given them a rest, then afterwards he had not have spoken of another day. There remains, therefore, a rest to the people of God. Most people don't realize it, but there is a 7th day rest required of all of us today. It's the 4th commandment. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. It's the 7th day. It's not any day of the week. It's the 7th day. It goes on to say now, comparing the land rest to another rest, a millennial rest. For he that is in it into his rest, has also ceased from his own works, as God did from his. Now he's comparing the land rest to our rest on the 7th day, as God rested on the 7th day, to a millennial rest that still is ahead, 1,000 year or a 7th day. It says, therefore let us enter into that rest, lest any man fall after the same example of unbelief. So what Hebrews is doing through this writer, he's pulling it all in together to talk about something that's very important that yet is ahead at the return of Jesus Christ. So I brought in one of our charts from a previous sermon, and it shows the 7-day as 1 week. You know, day 1 through 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the 7th day is the Sabbath day. But Hebrews says there remains therefore a rest. And remember, God showed us that there's a 7-year land rest. So you could change those days to years and you would have a 7-year land rest. Here's the days of the weeks from Sunday all the way through to Saturday. So now, in God's plan, as Peter says, a day is 1,000 years. We have a 7,000-year plan of God. And in that rest, there remains, God says in Hebrews, therefore there remains a rest. So God says in Hebrews, let us therefore enter into that rest. What rest is he talking about? This rest right here. The rest when Jesus Christ will return, will come back to this land, and during this period of time, the land that suffers today will be put back to its whole before the return of the new heaven and the new earth. And this is the 7th year land rest. 7,000 years, the millennial reign, is what Hebrews is talking about. All right, let's take a break now. We're going to get right into closing our program. July 16th, 2021 from the home office. All right, in the mail this week, sermon done right here, The Pilgrim Journey by Joe Schuster. And part 2 on the sermon that I did a little over a month ago is History Repeating Itself, part 2. What's happening to America? We also put in the mail last week the newsletter. If you're not on the mailing list, by all means, write in, get on the mailing list, and we'll send you a letter or a quarterly that goes out every month. The quarterly goes out 3 to 4 times a year, and every month we offer you a DVD of the month absolutely free. So be sure to sign up for the newsletter. Now, this Sabbath, I'm doing part 2 on the resurrecting the beast of Revelation. Very, very important. This is going to be 3 parts. I'm doing part 2 this week. So if you don't have anywhere to go and anyone to meet with, by all means, right now Cox is working for us, Cox Cable. It's working out, that has been getting out there. Hopefully it will this Sabbath. Is that you can tune in and catch part 2 on the beast of Revelation. Also, this is a chart that's going to be online. Goes into, this is basically the doctrines of the church for many, many years, and it ties in all the images of Daniel and the images of Revelation, the 13, 17, the scarlet beast. This gives you the entire picture of the beast, of what's taking place, and this is what I'm going through in this series. So if you want, you can just, this will be in the sermon. You can all frame the sermon, you can stop it, you can look at it, or I recommend just go online. You can download the page that you can be able to print out, and you can watch and you can study right from this very page. So I wanted to bring that out to you and let you know. So don't forget now, tomorrow, this Sabbath, if you don't have anywhere to go, tune in for part 2 of the beast, the resurrecting the beast. All right, there you have it. All right, so now let's wrap it up today for the Tisha B'Av, the song. Take a listen, and I'll be right back.
Like a widow, the city sits alone. No more children, no more pilgrims on the road, looking for the place called the joy of all the earth. Perfect in her beauty, she lies down in ashes and dust. No more laughter, no more cheer. song. We are strangers with no place to belong. Driven into darkness of desperate slavery. How long can the night carry on? Like a widow, the city shines no more.